Morning, Noon, and Night Erotica for Couples. I mean, that title alone, it definitely makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It really does.
So today we're diving deep into this specific collection. It's edited by Allison Tyler, who is like a major name in erotica.
Well, absolutely. Over 40 anthologies, I think,
Yeah.
including some big bestsellers like Afternoon Delight.
Yeah, she really knows her stuff. And there's this quote from Rachel Kramer Bussell about the stories being, what was it? Extremely hot, wild, and sexy.
Right, and that they'll keep you turned on around the clock,
Yeah.
which is, quite the promise.
It really is. So what's fascinating and what we're digging into is how this whole collection uses the 24-hour day as its structure.
Exactly. We're sort of looking at eroticism through the lens of time. Our mission, if you will, is to see how these different writers handle that idea of scorching hot sex anytime, anywhere.
And how the actual time of day, shapes the story, the mood, everything.
Yeah, does it change things? We've got the book itself, obviously, and some background on Tyler and a few of the authors, too.
So we're going to pull out some insights, see how character motivations might shift, how desire feels different at dawn versus, say, midnight.
It's a neat concept. We'll sample stories from different points in the day.
Okay, let's start things off really early. 4 a.m.
Quiet hours.
Right. This story is called 2004-7 by Ailing Weaver, and it drops us right in there. A wife, also named Ailing, she's awake, wanting intimacy.
But her husband is completely absorbed in work stress. Sound familiar to anyone?
Huh, maybe. And what's striking is this contrast. She apparently has orgasms regularly, like 3 a day.
Which sounds, great on paper.
But it feels like work to her. That detail says so much about needing that emotional connection, right? It's not just physical.
Absolutely. And then there's this flashback the author includes to the night before.
Oh, yeah, that was intense. Ripped clothes, skirt torn, buttons off his shirt, even bruises mentioned, worn like trophies.
Really raw, almost animalistic passion described there.
So you have that intensity and then this current longing and disconnect because of his stress.
It really highlights that ebb and flow in long-term relationships, doesn't it? How external stuff messes with intimacy. Can you keep that initial fire going? Or does it inevitably change?
That's the million-dollar question. Okay, let's skip ahead just a couple of hours. 6 a.m.
Still pretty early.
This one's Coffee by Heidi Chempa. Starts with Elisha getting home from a bachelorette party.
And apparently a strip club is involved.
Yeah, quite the entrance at 6 in the morning. And her husband, Aaron, he starts playfully questioning her about it.
Kind of teasing it, right?
Yeah.
Specifically asks if one of the dancers, Vanessa, made her come.
It's playful, but yeah, definitely loaded. You'd think it might cause a fight or some jealousy.
But it doesn't. It goes completely the other way.
Right into passionate sex. Champa gives us some pretty vivid details, too.
Oh, yeah. Hard strokes, rough kissing, the kitchen table rocking.
Her orgasm is described as intense, multiple waves. His reaction, too.
And afterwards, Aaron's totally fine with the lap dance story. He even jokes about getting Vanessa to finish it next time.
Which suggests, a certain level of comfort and maybe openness in their dynamic. They can play with these ideas.
That makes you think about boundaries and relationships and how couples might use novelty or even pretend jealousy to fuel things.
Okay, fast forward just one more hour. 7 a.m. Change of Shift by Jax Baynard.
The energy shifts here. More tenderness, maybe.
Definitely. We find Andrea in bed with Kai, who's a doctor. They've clearly had a passionate night.
And this morning, intimacy is described as really sensual. Deep kisses, exploring each other's bodies.
Yeah, she guides his attention, enjoys different positions for the connection they offer. The writing even compares the desire to different tides, sometimes a storm, sometimes lazy summer waves.
Lovely imagery. But then, real life intrudes.
The pager goes off.
Classic doctor on-call moment.
And the mood just snaps, right? From that languid intimacy to rushed efficiency, getting ready for the hospital shift.
It happens so fast, that quick kiss, the love you, Andy, it feels really poignant. It really does. Captures that bittersweet feeling of grabbing those moments of connection when life is so busy. How do you make time? How do you appreciate it?
Makes you think. Okay, now let's jump to the start of the workday. 9 a.m.
And a very different vibe again.
This is Office Briefing by Teresa Noel Roberts. And this one introduces a very specific dynamic right away.
Yes. A prearranged, submissive, dominant relationship between Alicia and her boss, Dan Shaw, during work hours. In the office.
The briefing immediately becomes not about work reports. He directs her to remove clothing.
Shirt, skirt, bra. Mentions forbidden knickers.
And then it moves to spanking.
Yeah.
Over the desk. framed as motivation related to her job performance.
The story includes quite explicit details about the physical sensations. The initial feeling, the anticipation of maybe a cane, the welts afterwards.
Right, 5 parallel lines crossed by a diagonal, it says. And what's interesting is Alicia's internal experience during this.
She's trying to maintain control, right?
Yeah.
Not cry out. Focusing on a work manual while this is happening.
It really delves into the psychological side of some BDSM dynamics, mental focus, control.
And then the physical release. Her orgasm jolts the desk. His fingers are inside her. It's a very visceral moment.
It is. And then, almost jarringly, the conversation switches right back to work stuff.
Like the carpooling system saved the day on some project, and how their whole arrangement started because of Christmas bonuses.
It mentions this happens regularly every couple of weeks, and then Stanshaw has this unexpected line.
Yeah, he says sometimes he feels like a sex object.
Which adds another layer, doesn't it? This story definitely raises questions about power, consent within ongoing dynamics, especially blurring professional and personal lines.
And it challenges simple ideas about who holds power. Stanshaw's comment complicates that. It shows eroticism cropping up in, well, unexpected places. We're just reporting the scenario here, of course, as depicted in the story. Absolutely.
Okay, moving on. 10 a.m. Kickoff by Victoria Jansen.
This one feels a bit lighter, maybe. Starts with a couple watching TV.
Martha and Sven. Martha finds the mentor character on the show, Knightley, attractive.
And after an episode reveals something about Knightley's past, his risque youth, they end up having sex.
But it starts a conversation first. Martha brings up watching 2 men together, compares it to men watching 2 women.
And fantasizes about a nightly sandwich, she calls it.
Yeah. Sven blushes, apparently.
Huh?
And then they get onto the topic of fan fiction about the show.
Which leads them down a rabbit hole, right? Exploring stories online, different pairings, alternate universes.
Vampire AUS, 1920s Paris. Stories just about the male characters, including some pretty kinky ones with nightly dog collars, dildos.
And this online exploration then bleeds into their real life.
Totally. Martha teaches Sven about anal sex, including rimming.
It's a great example of how shared interests, even fictional ones, can spark conversations and lead couples to explore new things together sexually. Communication and willingness to experiment.
Definitely. Okay, 11 a.m. Elevenses by Jeremy Edwards.
Elevenses, like a mid-morning snack.
Sort of, but maybe more. Scylla and Drew are moving house. They're on the road, in the truck.
And Scylla's feeling really homesick, missing their old routines. That emotion seems key here.
It really is. She actually has a mini orgasm just sitting in the passenger seat thinking about their old life.
Wow. And Drew teases her about her fantasy life. There's a lightness there despite the stress of moving.
Yeah. So they pull into a rest area for Elevenses, but Drew has other ideas.
The back of the moving truck becomes their bedroom.
Surrounded by furniture, Edwards paints a picture of this awkward but passionate encounter in a really cramped, unusual space.
Even the sound of the truck's gate clanging becomes a turn-on for Scylla.
Right. It highlights how desire can adapt. It's not always about the perfect setting. Their history, the anticipation, it makes this unconventional moment intense.
And she thinks maybe road elevenses could be their new thing, finding intimacy even during big life changes.
Okay, lunchtime approaches. 1 p.m. test drive by Summer Marsden.
Workplace attraction again.
Yep. Trish is test driving an SUV with Eli, her boss, who she's attracted to.
We get her internal thoughts, the attraction, the office gossip about him. There's clearly tension there.
Yeah, and an awkward, flirty moment with another colleague gets interrupted, pushing Trish and Eli together for the drive.
And Eli makes his move, drives to an empty field.
And suggests testing the interior of the SUV. Not subtle.
Leads to a pretty passionate encounter right there in the back. The story focuses quite a bit on the oral sex.
Very detailed descriptions of Trish's reaction, her intense orgasm.
It's all about the spontaneity, isn't it? Her surprise, his nerves, but the mutual desire wins out.
And then the aftermath, she's worried it'll show on her face. He reassures her he wanted it.
And that ending. Their colleague calls the client canceled, but wants to see a different model tomorrow. Another test drive needed.
Leading to that suggestive line between Trish and Eli, tomorrow it's your turn.
Definitely hints at more to come. Explores that thrill of workplace encounters and crossing boundaries.
3 p.m. Closed-door meeting by Sasha White.
Another work-related title, but a different scenario.
Totally different. Catherine's in her office, but she's thinking about her husband, Michael, who's away traveling for work.
She's missing him, feeling lustful. And then he video calls her.
Even though it's after midnight for him, the conversation turns intimate really fast.
He tells her he was dreaming about her naked. That opens the door.
And they engage in cyber sex, Technology bridging the distance.
She touches herself, describing it to him, following his commands. Pinch your nipples, taste yourself.
Shows him her wet fingers. Positions herself for the camera. It's quite explicit.
The story emphasizes the longing for their reunion only 48 more hours apart, and how that anticipation fuels this virtual encounter.
It's all about using technology, imagination, verbal description to maintain that connection despite being physically separated.
Shows how couples adapt and find ways to be intimate across distances.
5 p.m. cocktail hour, maybe? This is Somewhere by Christina Lloyd.
Ah, the title referencing that famous phrase.
Exactly. Bryn and the narrator, sounds like a couple, are snowed in at a holiday rental.
And there's a little conflict. Bryn forgot the gin for their anniversary tradition, dirty martinis at 3 o'clock.
The narrator's disappointed. Anniversaries are important to her, reminders not to take each other for granted. It leads to a little reflection on their dynamic.
How they met, actually his line, "It's always 5 o'clock somewhere," led to their first drinks together. Her being decisive, maybe seen as inflexible now, him being more laid back.
But the conflict doesn't fester. Bryn suggests she joins her in the bath, a clear peace offering.
Leads to a nice intimate moment. Pre-chilled glasses, even without ice. Then they move to the bedroom.
Drawn curtains, fire glowing, and then a really sensual surprise.
Bryn feeds her smoked salmon with juniper and beech, connecting the juniper back to the missing gin.
So creative, and that act of feeding each other becomes increasingly erotic, leading to sex.
It's a lovely story about navigating small bumps in a relationship and finding creative, sensual ways to reconnect, even when plans go wrong. Adaptability again.
Okay, 7 p.m., kinky craft night. Teresa Noel Roberts again.
Craft night. Sounds cozy.
Well, Jace gets home from the gym, finds his girlfriend surrounded by yarn haul from a yard sale. Standard enough.
But the conversation quickly turns to their shared kink.
Body tear sings, and Jace gets creative with the yarn.
Creates a spiderweb connecting her nipple ring and clit hood ring, tantalizing her with it.
It's a short scene, but really striking. It explicitly links knitting, crocheting, piercings, and kink.
Completely subverts expectations about fiber arts, right? Shows how any shared interest can become part of erotic play. Very specific, very playful.
9 p.m. Victoria Coach Station by Kate Pierce. The mood shifts dramatically here.
Yeah, the setting alone. A cold, impersonal London coach station at night. Julie is waiting for Michael.
And her thoughts reveal she's uncomfortable. It's not the romantic London she imagines. There's immediate tension when Michael arrives. Unresolved stuff.
Hints of infidelity are strong from the start.
They duck into a nearby alleyway for a very quick, very rough sexual encounter.
Against the wall. The description emphasizes the forcefulness, the urgency, almost a lack of tenderness. Her climax happens during this intensity.
And his question afterwards, what will you tell him, confirms there's another man involved.
Then there's a second, even shorter, less tender act. And his comment about her going home on the tube, knowing she's been with him, it's pointed.
Yeah, it feels like a power play. The scene shifts to an all-night cafe. Silence, tea, accusations.
Then Julia finally says she's going to tell him, presumably Dan, mentioned earlier, everything, suggests a shift, maybe taking back some control.
It's a complex look at infidelity, power dynamics, the darker side of desire, rough sex intertwined with deceit. Again, just outlining the scenario presented.
A very different tone from many of the other stories.
Definitely. Okay, 11 p.m. Strip Poker by Ashley Lister.
Back to something potentially more playful.
Seems so. Amanda's playing strip poker with friends, including Frank, who she's into.
You can feel her excitement, her nervousness about the game.
Lister details the game progressing friends losing items of clothing. Debbie loses her bra, Carl's shirt, Frank down to boxers.
Amanda's getting self-conscious, aware Frank is looking.
And then the forfeit is announced. Loser has to kiss someone chosen by the winner.
Raises the stakes considerably.
And Amanda realizes she actually wants to lose, so she has to kiss Frank.
She does lose. Removes her panties, naked in front of everyone.
Her friends react. Frank's apparently beaming, and then the friends conveniently make their excuses and leave.
Leaving Amanda naked with Frank, her prize, ready for that forfeit kiss. And likely more.
Taps into that excitement, the vulnerability of those kinds of games, the anticipation when attraction is involved.
Using a game to navigate potential romance or sex.
Midnight Strikes. Movie Date by N.T. Morley.
And another unconventional setting.
A porn shop. Marie is there to meet Aiden.
The story details the environment, the other customers, the layout, the preview section, with rules for women.
Marie seems confident, though, comfortable there, anticipating Aiden's arrival. He shows up leather pants, boots, The works?
She draws a parallel in her mind between this setting and a church confessional. Interesting comparison.
She buys tokens for the viewing booths, and they meet inside. Well, sort of.
Through a glory hole between two separate booths.
Right. While Marie is watching a porn film in her booth, she's giving Aiden oral sex through the hole.
The story describes her technique, his reactions, her own arousal. She's using a vibrator simultaneously.
Contrast the sounds of the movie with their private interaction. There's even a mention of her wearing knee pads, a practical detail.
Her orgasm coincides with his ejaculation. Then she just confidently walks out.
Explores the thrill of anonymity, blending fantasy, the porn film, with reality, the physical act. Very specific scenario.
Definitely pushing boundaries there.
1 a.m. Girls' Night Out by Vita Bailey. Callie's out with friends at a club.
But she's aware of Rob, a guy she has a sort of casual thing with. He's there too.
She sees him dancing with someone else. She's thinking about recent bad sex, just wants to dance with her friends. We get details of her backless dress, necklace worn backward.
Rob finds her outside later. Awkward conversation, hinting at stalking, but it leads somewhere.
They go back to his place. It's nicer than she expected, and he does something new.
Asks her to stay the night. A first for them. He asks what she wants.
She struggles to answer. Then he undresses her in this really unique way, turns her dress around so the backless part frames her breasts.
Asks her to take off her boots. Then things get interesting.
He uses her backward necklace, the beads, as a sort of gentle choke, pinching her nipples with it. Sensual, slightly rough.
She feels pleasure and pain mixed. They end up in bed. He promises more in the morning.
Shows how a casual dynamic can shift, how unexpected interactions can lead to exploring different desires, maybe a bit of light BDSM.
Evolution of their connection.
2 a.m. Date Night by Sofia Valenti. Celia gets home late.
From a date with an ex-boyfriend, Rick.
And her husband, Brandon, is waiting in the dark. The tension is immediate.
Their dialogue quickly reveals this unusual dynamic. Brandon knows about the affair.
And it seems to be part of their sexual dynamic. Celia's internal thoughts say she craves the punishment from Brandon after being with Rick. It makes her orgasms more intense.
Guilt and desire are really tangled up here.
Brandon uses possessive language, my bad girl, slutty girl, clearly aroused by the thought of her with Rick.
Celia undresses, but keeps bra and heels on, kneels submissively. He interrogates her about the date.
Then the punishment is rough sex. Grinding, stroking, forceful penetration, fingering her anus simultaneously.
Celia's reaction is intense, conflict, but arousal. The story ends with her grateful for a pause, but anticipating more.
This one really explores complex themes: infidelity, consent within that dynamic, power, guilt, feeling, desire. Again, presenting the narrative as written.
Very intense, potentially controversial dynamics being explored.
And finally, we reach 3 a.m., Last Call. This one's by the editor herself, Allison Tyler.
Fitting into the cycle. Seen as a bar at closing time.
The narrator, presumably Tyler, is there with 5 men, all aroused, she notes.
She anticipates what's coming. We get brief descriptions of the guys, a chef, an angry friend divorcing Flynn, her own man, Declan, a buddy, a drifter.
Her intention seems clear, a gangbang, though she notes no rules were really discussed.
The regulars leave, the door locks, the atmosphere shifts.
Declan kisses her, Flynn touches her, the bartender tries to act normal, cleaning up.
Flynn kisses her neck. The cook checks if she meant what she said earlier about spaying. She confirms. Declan apparently had a similar chat with the bartender, Brody.
Things escalate. Flynn moves her to a table, Declan pushes up her dress, Brody approaches, hesitant but willing.
And the drifter's comment, regular Friday night, suggests this isn't entirely out of the blue, adds a layer of secrecy.
Explores group sex dynamics, spontaneous desire, the contrast between the normal bar closing and this hidden activity.
A very provocative end to the 24-hour cycle.
Wow, so across this whole day and night, we've really seen stories from such a mix of authors.
Absolutely. We mentioned Vita Bailey's look at casual relationships evolving. Jax Baynard, fascinating double life, right? Financial advisor by day, dominatrix by night.
Yeah. And Christina Lloyd, with her master's in literature, bringing that sensibility. Kate Pierce tackling those really complex relationship dynamics.
Teresa Noel Roberts, clearly comfortable exploring kink in different ways across her 2 stories.
And of course, Allison Tyler herself, editor and contributor. Those nicknames for her are something else. Trollop with a laptop, literary siren.
Mistress of literary erotica, and her listed preferences, black coffee, red lipstick, tequila, Led Zeppelin. It paints a picture.
It really does. Knowing a bit about the authors adds, like, another layer to reading the collection, doesn't it?
Definitely. You see how their perspectives might shape the stories. Erotica isn't monolithic. It comes from diverse creators.
So wrapping up this deep dive, morning, noon, and night, really delivers on that idea of exploring desire across the entire 24-hour cycle.
It's quite a journey. The variety is huge. Different desires, settings, relationship types, levels of intensity.
It totally blows up the idea that scorching hot sex only happens at certain times or in certain ways.
Yeah, it shows intimacy popping up everywhere. Quiet mornings, busy workdays, late nights, unexpected places. Challenges conventional thinking about when and where eroticism fits into life.
Makes you think, doesn't it? After hearing about all these, what time of day do you think holds the most, maybe unexplored erotic potential?
Ooh, good question.
And maybe how could those everyday mundane routines, how could they be sparked with a bit of unexpected passion?
Definitely food for thought. How to find possibilities for that scorching hot sex anytime, anywhere in your own life.
Something to mull over.